Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight. The 4 people arrested from Parliament yesterday after 2 of them threw smoke canisters inside the Lok Sabha have been sent to police custody for 7 days for questioning and slapped with terror charges. 1 more person has been arrested. The police are still investigating if there was a larger conspiracy. A 6th person, somebody called Lalit Jha from Bihar, possibly the mastermind, is on the run. On the show this evening, the conspiracy behind all of this and what we know so far about the people involved. Next on the show, the oil spill in Chennai that originated from the Chennai Petroleum Corporation has now crossed at least 20 square kilometers into the sea. A week after the oil spill, the damage to Chennai's eco-sensitive Ennore Creek is only getting worse. Oil is floating all over the river Kosasta Layar. Tar balls and thick layers of oil are seen in several pockets along the coastline. There's a trail of oil deposits as well. How serious is this? Why did this happen? Is enough being done to fight this oil spill? Also on the program, in the battle to fight climate change, there is light with the first ever deal for reducing fossil fuels having been agreed to at the UN Climate Change Summit in Dubai. It's a deal that has been secured after weeks of hard-fought negotiations meant to send a signal to investors and policymakers. But first, let's turn our attention to the conspiracy of the in the Parliament attack case. What exactly was this all about?
The individuals who stormed into Parliament and into the headlines. Sagar and Manoranjan who rushed inside Lok Sabha, Neelam and Amol who protested outside, Vishal who sheltered all the accused, and Lalit who planned the entire thing. All 6 accused from different parts of the country united by one common bond. They were all members of the Bhagat Singh fan club page and wanted to draw attention to problems like unemployment and farmers' woes. 32-year-old Neelam Azad is from Jind, located 165 kilometers from Delhi. Her father is a confectioner and brother works as a milkman. Neelam has multiple qualifications including an MPhil, but despite that was unable to get a job as a teacher. Neelam reportedly came in contact with the other accused during the ongoing farmers' movement in Chandigarh around 9 months ago.
नौकरी न लेकर बहुत परेशान था। नेट भी क्लियर है, स्टैट भी क्लियर, सीटेट भी क्लियर है, एमए बीएड एमफिल सारी कर रखी है। एन मेरे कदे घर आए, एन कदे बात हुई, एन हमने कदे देखा, अरे एन हमने फोन पर कदे बात कर दी देखी वा।
This is the house of another accused, Vishal Sharma, who was picked up from Gurugram. Vishal, a driver by profession, also had financial problems like Neelam.
इसका वो रिलेशनशिप किसी के साथ भी नहीं हल हो गया, किसी के साथ भी। Nobody was in contact with him.
While 5 of the accused are in police custody, police are still on the lookout for Lalit Jha, who's on the run. He was allegedly the main conspirator who planned the breach. He was last spotted near Neemrana on the Rajasthan-Haryana border. It was Lalit who reportedly filmed the protest outside the parliament, took the phones from Neelam and Amol and sent the video of the attack to former NGO partner Nilaksha Aich in Kolkata. This shop belongs to Niloy Aich, the father of Nilaksha Aich, who also finds himself embroiled in this parliament security breach because one of the main accused sent him a video on WhatsApp of the incident. Most of these families of these individuals who've been involved in this parliament security breach are very ordinary people. And as the police launch an investigation amidst a huge uproar in Parliament, they are struggling to come to terms with the sudden attention that has been directed towards them. With Rajiv Ranjan Shukla and camera person GD Shankar in Halishahar in North Chabis Pargana in West Bengal, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Well, joining us now, Vikram Singh, the former Director General of Police in Uttar Pradesh, and somebody who can help us try and go through what some of the key issues are. Snehalata Srivastav, Jyoti Mani, one of the Congress MPs who's actually been suspended now. She was also witness to what took place yesterday, and RP Singh, National Spokesperson of the BJP. Dr. Vikram Singh, let me come to you first. On the basis of what we know so far, and in your extensive experience, does this look to be a part of a terror plot? Would you call this a terror plot at all?
It will be presumptuous on my part to say it's a terror plot as of now. But to say that they are a part of a toolkit and a larger conspiracy, yes. My experience tells me that they were absolutely of average middle-class families. They did not have them to have a recce of the Sansad Bhavan to invest more than 4 lakhs rupees in this attack, a dastardly attack on the temple of democracy. And there is somebody who's the master conductor of the orchestra, Vishnuji. He is the Lalit Jha, is certainly not the one from Kolkata. There's somebody even higher. And these people, especially this lady Neelam, happens to be a habitual agitator and has participated in very undesirable and nefarious activities. 42-year-old, has 6 degrees, including she is net qualified. She could have easily got a job in any degree college or any prestigious college. No, but she chose to be a professional agitator. Others also, they belong to the Bhagat Singh fans club, but they did not pick up the pain, sacrifice and effort as the supreme sacrifice given by Shahid Bhagat Singh, but picked up something of a very perverse nature in the name of Shahid Bhagat Singh, and that cannot be condoned at all. Now, in the manner in which they got the gas canisters, the way they wrecked the Sansad, it is obviously insidious. I am satisfied that the UAPA has been invoked. I would be very happy if the provisions of the National Security Act are also invoked. Whether it was a dry run, whether it was a pre-run, or whether it was a rehearsal. The fact of the matter is the ingredients of the crime are complete, and therefore they have to answer to the rule book. That is
Dr.
my
Vikram
conclusion.
Singh, that's all fine. I'm just trying to understand, from your experience as a top police officer, do you believe, just based on what you told me now, that this was possibly some sort of dry run?
Possibly on the 13th of December, when Gurpatwant Singh Pannu gave an open threat from New York, and it is just a coincidence that they also tried this dry run on the 13th of December. No, it is just cannot be a coincidence. I would say there is much more to it than what meets the eye. Let us have the separate interrogation, narco analysis, and a collective interrogation, and let them face each other and say, I can assure you that there is a deeper conspiracy that goes beyond Lalit Jha of Kolkata. And this man who shielded them, Vicky Sharma in Haryana, happens to be an ex-member of the Fauji gang. Therefore, there is the criminal nexus that is already coming out in just less than 24 hours.
Let me just quickly go across to Snehalata Srivastava, former Secretary General of the Lok Sabha. Ma'am, do you not believe that the watch and ward staff, which protects Parliament from the inside, should have been more proactive in getting hold of these two people inside the Lok Sabha, as opposed to MPs jumping on them and then keeping them down?
Yes. In fact, when I saw this on television, I was quite shocked to see the kind of, that accused was doing, like jumping from one desk to another desk and trying to run towards the chair. So actually it's a new parliament. I do not know the mechanism which they have built up now, but in the old Lok Sabha we had divided to cover the honorable MPs according to the strength we had, and the additional staff is always put on duty. I am sure this time also they must have put additional staff on duty to protect the honorable MPs. But it's certainly a very serious matter, and anything could have happened. And it's a place where the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Home Minister, and other ministers and all MPs, members of Parliament, sit. And this kind of
it is absolutely horrific what took place. I know RP Singh and Jyotimani are waiting, but I really must go back to Dr. Vikram Singh for a little bit more on this. What strikes me as being perhaps the most bizarre part of this, Dr. Singh, is that they were able to conceal this gas canister, smoke canister, in their shoes and actually enter, number one. And number two, why is it that full body scanners, in which using backscatter technology, wasn't installed in the first place where it should have been installed, where even plastic is detected?
Vishnuji, you have pointed out just 2. I can point out 5 more. The horrible blunders that we have been committed. This was best avoided, and that too in the temple of democracy, which has been desecrated by them on 13th. Now to tell you the why, that ordinary teachers are known there are copycats who use unfair means in the examinations. They are picked up by ordinary teachers of primary schools. They're not police officers, and they could pass off and go without. Any person who conceals anything in the shoe agreed that they're wearing high soles, agreed that they had caved it, made a cavity for those gas canisters. But yes, a professional and an observant police officer would everything is not normal in the gate. Then those who wrecked the premises of the Sansad Bhavan, they did it multiple times. Had the CCTV been audited, they would have been detected. We have artificial intelligence backup software which would have given us the indication. Fault number 2. Fault number 3, the actual frisking and actual documentation failed in them. They have multiple movements, suspicious movement. There's something Vishnuji known as suspicious activity reporting system, SARS. Anybody, I say I don't like a face, not because of the looks, but because of the conduct, demeanor, background, and antecedents. That would have been sufficient reason to nail all of them. We did not. There are almost 200 vacancies in the watch and ward staff of the Sansad. There is no head of the Sansad security arrangement. What are we looking at? Then the marshals are absolutely overweight, obese chaps. It was for our honorable members of the parliament to take them and accost these hoodlums. The marshals were supposed to intervene directly, but no marshal intervened. And the marshal there in the visitors gallery should have intervened. It takes 35 seconds, almost the same amount of time that takes a grenade to unpin and blast. For 35 seconds.
And that's exactly the point over here. It's almost fortuitous. It is fortuitous that all that they had was a smoke canister, because it could as easily have been a plastic grenade, a rail grenade.
Plastic grenade,
it's not necessarily
anything.
Full of metal. It could have metal balls inside, but the external shell is plastic. This could also have been sneaked in, right?
Very true. This is something that was best avoided, and nobody intervened. But
We
for
could
the
have
MPs,
had multiple fatalities in our parliament. That's the bottom line, isn't it, Dr. Singh?
That would have been an unmitigated disaster, I can assure you of that. The plastic bombs, the plastic explosives give ample opportunity for a mischievous and a person of a devious mindset. And no intervention, the cumulative failure at multiple levels. And I do hope that the postings are done and the chief of the security of the Sansad Bhavan is made immediately. Vacancies are filled up and the suspension is no solution. They should be dismissed from service. Those who were found negligent and did not perform what they were expected to do, Vishnuji.
Jyotibani, in all of this, and I know the protests that the opposition was having, they want accountability, they want a statement. The government says that they will. What more did you actually expect? Did you, for example, expect a statement from the Home Minister today? What more was your expectation, which is as an opposition leader, was not fulfilled today?
See, Vishnu, it's not that opposition has to go to parliament next day and demand something from the Prime Minister and Home Minister to make a statement. See, any responsible person or any responsible Prime Minister could have come to the house today. We didn't expect him to come yesterday because after such a security breach, nobody will expect Prime Minister to come that place. Today it was completely scanned, completely screened. It was clean. So today it definitely Prime Minister could have come, and not only for MPs or opposition MPs, through the floor of the parliament, he could have addressed the nation and briefed the nation what has exactly happened, what are the future assurance the government is giving to them. It's not a simple issue of this MP, that MP. Every MP from all political parties were there yesterday. Apart from the MPs, there were so many common people who were sitting in the gallery, and also there are parliament staff. So this is the situation. That is why we are asking a statement from the Prime Minister. Second thing we are asking for a resignation of the Home Minister. Why? This is not the first isolated incidents we can see. We are still, Manipur is burning. There are women actually being naked on the street and raped. Hundreds of people have been killed. Still, Manipur is burning for many months.
But Jyotivani ji,
Home Minister
the
couldn't do
Manipur
anything.
situation, as critical as it is completely unrelated to what happened yesterday.
No, you cannot say like that, Vishnu. It's everybody who's holding responsibility. We should think that he couldn't bring things under control. Third thing, what Mr. Singh has mentioned, why we need a complete discussion on the issue about the parliament. Only yesterday we have realized many other things. Earlier we were very unhappy with the old parliament because this is unnecessary spending of money, while a beautiful a old parliament with a new technology is already there. Then there is no point of spending people money on 1,000 crores and 20,000 crores of Central Vista project.
So Jyotimani, you've raised
it's not
3
user
points.
friendly. That's
You've
what our
raised 3
complaint.
points.
Vishnu,
Let's try and get
Vishnu,
RP
let
Singh
me
to
finish
reply to
quickly.
that.
No, give me 2 minutes. Let me quickly finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Then second, now yesterday we realized that yes, old parliament has a round building. We all know there are 3 lobbies. So first lobby only MPs, media persons who are have a pass, and the MPs PS and the people who have the pass to go the gallery only have access. Second lobby only MPs and the parliament staff have an access. Third also same. Then the parliament will come. In the old parliament, you cannot imagine that somebody can jump from the visitors gallery. No bone will be there. Then you jump from there.
Okay.
Second thing,
Jyotimani,
one minute.
Let me get a response.
Give me 1 minute. 1 minute. If
Jyotimani,
something happened like yesterday or some fire broke out, we cannot come out of this parliament.
It's only fair to get
very
RP.
detailed discussion. The money, like Mr. Singh rightly mentioned, there is a lack of security. Earlier we have 3 buildings. Now we have 5 buildings.
Jyotimani,
there is a
I
shortage.
promise you I will come back to you.
310 is a
But
whole
it
number
cannot be a monologue.
Now we have 2 more buildings.
Let's go across to RP Singh, and I promise I'll come back to you. All right, RP Singh, would you like to respond? Can you just bring down Jyotimani's audio for half a second? I don't think she can hear me. RP Singh, would you like to respond to several of the points which have been mentioned? And we'll get that. I think she can't hear me. We'll come back to Jyotimani in a moment. Yeah.
Vishnu, she has been suspended from the parliament for her conduct. I mean, don't suspend her from your show. Let her complete what she has to say. Then I'll answer that also.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead with your point.
I'm prepared to take all questions and answer all questions. Vishnu, let's understand first what's happened and what's the fallback of this. See, we accept that there's a breach. I mean, no one can deny that there's a breach. This has not happened for the first time. This has happened earlier in the 70s, 90s, and with people have gone with the guns and pistols inside. They have carried pamphlets, leaflets. I mean, that has happened earlier also. But that doesn't absolve us that why it happened now. Now, what happened and what need to be investigated, and then yes, when do the Home Minister come and answer the questions of the Parliament? It's a day one, investigation is still on, and then we are not very still sure that who are the people behind this complete conspiracy. There's a few people who have been caught. There are people who are absconding, and there can be people who would have masterminded all this. As Vikram Singh was saying, that it's not as we see it, it's not as it is. Because 2 rekkis were done before this, and then in those 2 rekkis, who are the people who helped them to do those 2 rekkis? Who are the people who, I mean, now we are being accused that there's our member of parliament who's involved, who issued the passes or who gave the passes. But who gave the passes for the 2 earlier rekkis also? It was done by the same set of people. So that needs to be investigated. And also, how this complete thing was planned, how this money, who gave the money to plan this complete thing, how they traveled from one part of the country to other part.
And everything that you're saying. But there's a simple question that opposition leaders want to know. Should the Home Minister or the Prime Minister not have been present to give a statement, even if it wasn't a statement inside Parliament, a statement outside? Will that happen soon?
Vishnu, Rajnath Singh ji as a defense minister, because that's not issue only related to the internal security, this can be had ramification whether the external security also. Rajnath Singh ji in the Parliament has said that we are investigating the matter, and then really surely after the investigation we'll let everyone knows everything. I mean, it was Rajnath Singh ji was there in the Parliament. So, and he is the defense minister of the country, and a responsible cabinet minister and a cabinet colleague of the Prime Minister and the Home Minister. So, is there the issue that no, the Home Minister or the Prime Minister should answer the questions and only then they'll be satisfied? No. As I said, there are a lot of things which are in circulation. For example, I have to say there are pictures of the key conspirator Lalit Jha with certain political with people from the political affiliations, and there are also records which shows that there were some connections of these people with people which are of suspicious conduct. Now, even this Pannu guy, this Khalistani, has issued some reward for these people. Now, all of this need to be.
It does need to be investigated. Jyotimani, we lost a signal to you in that we could hear you, you couldn't hear me. And I intervened at that stage to give RP Singh an opportunity. But my question to you, Jyotimani, at this stage is that the point that Mr. RP Singh makes is that the Defence Minister spoke today. As a starting point, do you not believe that that was enough, or will you continue to push on this issue until the Prime Minister and the Home Minister speak?
Vishnu, China has occupied 16,500 square kilometer of Indian sovereign land. Ideally, Rajnath Singh ji has to made a statement on this many months before, but it doesn't happen. This government is afraid of China. They don't say the word
idea
China.
Of China has occupied that
so why should Rajnath Singh ji say something?
Let her make her point.
I am not interfering when anybody is speaking, Vishnu. Please, let's have
1 second. Let her make her point, please.
Let's have a civil debate.
No, that's not a point. This is misinformation. This is
let's have a. You can't shout down. This you are a covered government.
RP Singh ji, please. Let's focus on Parliament security and not.
Every common people will say.
I give you a challenge, man. Please prove it, because the army chief is on record.
You don't care about. You are afraid of China. You don't care about China occupied our land or not. You don't care about it because you don't have. Then you don't worry about this nation. Then I can
all
say
right, okay, both of you, let's please try and keep it sensible and
because your past record says actually you played.
All right, look, let's focus on the Parliament issue right now.
The same mindset still you are having. That's what we are saying.
Let me go back to the former DGP Vikram Singh, because we cannot be having fighting and shouting and screaming on this program. Dr. Vikram Singh, let me come back to you. And ultimately, though, if we are to look at it from a security standpoint, would you not say, sir, that it is an intelligence failure more than anything else?
Multiple failures, and that an intelligence failure is one of them. Not doing security audit, not filling up the vacancies of the Sansad security, not replacing the chief of security, and also not upgrading the security apparatus, inducting the latest technology, that is artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. And also auditing the CCTV. It is one thing to see, and one to see a thing intelligently and draw the lessons if a person is making repeated rounds of the Sansad Bhavan, and our intelligence system like COMSA and also that which can identify the red flags would have given the indication that somebody is wrecking the Sansad Bhavan, and that is a cause of concern. And also replacing the old guard, the obese and the senile marshals with commandos of the paramilitary forces, young men and women. They would have been a different story altogether, and these people would have been reduced to pulp in no time. It is not for our honourable members of parliament to accost and neutralize the intruders. It was for the security personnel to have done that.
No, exactly. And, again, Dr. Singh, again, from a security standpoint, if there is a breach of parliament, aren't security forces over there fully authorized to use lethal force in a situation like that?
Absolutely. The use of the right of private defense, section 96 to 106 of the IPC, empowers them, as also the mandatory duty for which they are paid, to use basic minimum force to neutralize anyone intruding the temple of democracy and using explosives, even if they happen to be smoke cannons. Yes, to neutralize them with the use of basic and minimum force.
All right. I'd like to thank you so much for sharing all of those points. It is absolutely key. The response of security forces also in this situation needs to be looked at after the security breach took place. Thank you, sir, very much for being with us. Thank you all very much for being with us. We're moving on to something of huge concern in Tamil Nadu. In fact, it really should be huge concern across India. The oil spill in Chennai that originated from the refinery of the Chennai Petroleum Corporation has now crossed at least 20 square kilometers into the sea. A week after the oil spill, the damage to Chennai's eco-sensitive Ennore Creek is only getting worse. Oil is floating all over the river. Kosasta Layar, tar balls and thick layers of oil are seen in several pockets across the coastline. Just how bad is it? I just want to play out this footage full screen before I go across to my panelists. Let's just have this footage right now. This happened, the leak, when the impact of the cyclone was being felt in Tamil Nadu and in the city of Chennai as well. These are the areas where, as you can see, fishermen have been deployed to actually skim the surface of the sea in this estuary region of the oil that you can see so clearly on your screens, to lift it up and try and get it out. When in fact the skimmers, other more elaborate machinery, including machinery which sucks out oil and has the ability of, to a large extent, being able to contain an oil spill, has not been deployed in the numbers or in the extent that it needs to. So you've got fishermen over there doing this job. Now, it's a large area which has been affected. Let's see if we can play out some other footage as well of this area. But let me introduce my panelists, Dr. Jayashree Venkatesan, Managing Trustee of Care Earth, and Arun Krishnamurthy, the founder of EFI. Thank you very much for joining us. Arun Krishnamurthy, what has the impact been on that estuary region of Ennore?
We're talking about an industrial belt which is almost with island characteristics and estuary, as rightly mentioned, freshwater, aquatic, marine, and all kinds of life affected because of this industrial contamination. This is industrially dynamic zone. For people who don't know Chennai, north of Chennai, we're talking about heavy port activity, a large fishing harbor. Not just that, we're talking about industrial manufacturing, oil refineries, coal, and a lot of other items which are environmentally hazardous in a small zone. And these are environmental disasters waiting to happen. And this is not the first time we've had such an oil spill, right? And to witness this kind of an oil spill in one such an eco-sensitive zone, especially given that we are in our sea turtle nesting season is about to start. At one such definitely livelihoods, fisherfolk livelihood, and many of that is the key focus, given that ecologically speaking, the wildlife aspect of the impact that this is going to have is scary, is worrying, given that we have more and more systems forming in the open ocean with high tides and more. Humanly cleaning this may not be possible. Even if it's claimed that it is to be clean, I don't see that it's going to happen so.
Okay. Dr. Jayashree Venkatesan, what is your reading of the particular situation in terms of the harm which has already been caused, for example, to marine life? We've seen pictures of fish which have been impacted in the area. There are fisher folk over here who work, their boats, the areas where they operate, and this has apparently gone to approximately, what, 20 square kilometers?
Nothing surprising about it. This is an area that's been subject to repeat environmental issues. This is not the first time something like this is happening. It's an extremely vulnerable area, at the same time extremely charismatic in terms of its ecology, in terms of its diversity. The thing that actually triggers this whole thing into a catastrophe or a disaster is the fact that this is a huge wetland complex, very shallow, very flat, and things can spread out in no time, and there's absolutely no means by which we can control it. Secondly, and far more important, is the fact while the immediate impact of it is visible by way of dead fish and other kinds of organisms, the long-term impact is something that nobody has recognized till now. Oil has a tendency to accumulate in places, and there are enough nooks and crevices here in terms of farms, mud flats, mangroves, and all that. What kind of impact it would have on a long-term basis is something that we can only speculate at this point of time. There's no categorical answer to this question as to what would be the impact. It is suffice to say that the impact is going to be huge long-term, but we have no idea as to how intense or how much the impact is going to be. We can only speculate.
This is actually fairly strong footage. Let's have this up full screen if we can for a moment, because, you can see these workers standing in the oil. This is from the early days when it actually took place in the residential areas in Chennai, which also flooded partly with this oil. You can see the muck which got into their home, seawater, fresh water, all of it mixing with this oil, which actually leaked out. Arun, as we see this footage, Arun Krishnamurthy, where is the accountability? Is that the big concern? Is there anybody who's going to be sent to jail? Is there anybody, any institution, any industry which is going to be shut down, or is it just back to usual?
No industry can be shut down given the fact that these industries in this belt cater to as many livelihoods as we speak in terms of fisher folk and others who are also residing in this belt. And Chennai's economy, a part of India's economy, depends on this tiny belt. This is industrialization with rare minimum, very few aspects of conservation practices that could be taken into account for, which is happening across the country. And Chennai is a fine example as to how we should not carry forward our developmental plan with no idea, just looking at dry days. We go around building and we have no safety precautions. We don't have any kind of vulnerability reports that could support us in combating such untoward incidences. There is definitely going to be no accountability, right? This is going to be in the news for a few days, and after which this is going to be forgotten. We've had many oil spills in this very belt even in the past. Whatever happened during those oil spills, there will be judiciary that will take note of this and initiate some action. There will be some industrial output which would come in terms of remedy that would be put out, a few labor, few photo opportunities. Unfortunately, as rightly pointed by a fellow panelist, the impact of this on health, on ecology, on economy is going to be huge, and it's going to be long term, and nobody is to be held accountable in the short term period, because we've seen this time in and again. We've seen this.
Let's just bring up a map of the area. I'm not familiar with the area. Dr. Venkateshan, perhaps you can help me out. But there's the CPCL facility where the leak took place. The water, as I understand, the oil, as I understand it, mixed with water of the Buckingham Canal. It went northwards towards Ennore, and in that estuarine area, it leaked out, and it polluted a river as well. Is that right? So it's not just the estuary or the area where the sea merges with the land. It's also a river which has been polluted, and the canal too.
Yes, that's how it normally is. This is a typical pattern in terms of spread of pollutants, and the pollutants, the other pollutants that have been in this area for a very long time, fly ash and other things, also follow the same pattern. If something happens in Vennore, which by the way is the most vulnerable patch along the Coromandel coast, and this is something that's been proven by research. If something happens here, it spreads both inland as well as towards the sea. And that is the biggest problem in terms of not only understanding the impact, but also taking up remedial action.
Arun Krishnamurthy, a final question to you. Do we know what exactly happened? It's obviously something which came out of CPCL. Was it a tank which leaked? Was this an overflow tank which was kept, which sort of mixed with seawater, rainwater when the flooding took place? What exactly happened?
I can speak for the region and what could have happened. I don't have proof of actual data of what actually happened, but we assume, simply because we know this belt, we've restored 2 lakes in this belt, again with local industry, so we kind of know what could have happened. It's as simple as this. There are marsh characteristics, there's a riverine ecology on one side, and as rightly pointed through that map, there is a flow dynamics to this region. And this is also the downstream to a large watershed, which means there's going to be flow from upstream. When that pressure builds on this tiny belt, all the stored contaminants at one point, especially given that we had 19 centimeters rainfall in one evening and almost 30 plus centimeter rainfall the next 2 days, which meant that kind of flow and the heavy intensity rainfall would have caused some kind of a breach and a leakage, which could have led to this kind of a dissemination into the channel, and thereafter to this extent. When we visited this belt, right, the images that you're seeing from the household, there's almost 5 feet worth flood stagnation, and flood stagnation across Chennai is very different from this, simply because everywhere else is rainwater with the sewage or muck that you're seeing. Here you actually had a 1.5 feet skim layer of just oil and hydrocarbons in that water, right? And it became a sludge with slippery characteristics. And that's what we see also happening on the coast now. That's exactly why we feel cleaning this manually with whatever be the techniques and technology we claim to the extent that it has spread is not possible. And for this quantum to have been released, it would not have been possible but for a breach of a mega kind and type.
This is just so horrific. It is just terrible. Yeah. Well, I mean, what does one say? Thank you so much for informing and keeping our viewers alive to something like this. And it is an issue along with all other environmental issues that we'll try, even on prime time when people like to shout more, to keep alive. Thank you very much. And we'll take a short break. Up after that, the big breakthrough which has taken place at COP28 after so much negativity, finally a transition deal in Dubai, a transition away from fossil fuel. Our futures, who knows, might just be secure. In the battle to fight climate change, there is light, with the first ever deal for reducing fossil fuels having been agreed to at the UN Climate Change Summit in Dubai. It's a deal that has been secured after weeks of hard-fought negotiations meant to send a signal to investors and policymakers. Representatives from 200 countries agreed to reduce global consumption of fossil fuels to avert the worst impact of climate change. This sends a huge signal of a unified globe fighting one of our greatest challenges, if not our greatest, global warming, which could result in a climate catastrophe. There was powerful opposition from the Saudi Arabia-led group of oil-producing and exporting countries, which argues that emissions can be cut without shunning specific types of fuels. Countries will now be responsible in delivering on national policy changes. Each country now has a responsibility based on what they have signed up on. The declaration calls for, and I quote, a just, orderly and equitable transition so as to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. The agreement calls to a tripling of renewable energy capacity by 2030. What are the key goals? Reduce coal consumption, accelerate the use of carbon capture and storage technologies, clean up industries, and of course, move away from all sorts of fossil fuels. Is that realistic given the sharp differences which exist across the world? Joining us now, Alka Kelkar, Abhir Bhalla, who's a young environmentalist, just back from Dubai. He's a TEDx speaker as well, passionate about the environment. Ashish Chaturvedi, who is the head of action for climate and environment at the UNDP India, and Navroz Dubash, one of the finest speakers and thinkers on this entire issue. Navroz, let me come to you first. As I look through all the positives which have been achieved in Dubai, it just strikes me that not enough is known on what individual nations need to do. So is that the real concern? Everybody says, yes, let's move away or let's transition from fossil fuel, but how much does each country do? Is there any clarity on that?
Well, thanks, Vishnu, for having me on the show, and thanks for taking on this segment. I think what we have to keep in mind is the language that you read out was part of a much longer paragraph that gave several options for what countries could do. So it said phasing down of coal. It allowed for transitional fuels, which means gas. It talked about the transition away from fossil fuels. It talked about nuclear and so on and so forth. Now, this is very much in keeping with the spirit of the Paris Agreement, which is that countries get to define their own pledges. It has to be nationally determined. And in a sense, that's a positive thing. But what it also means is that we don't really know what it all adds up to within a country, let alone across the globe. So it's certainly a good thing that fossil fuels have been explicitly mentioned. But I think if we think that this then means that all countries now feel compelled to immediately start transitioning away, no, that's not the case. The pace, the manner, the supporting actions that they take, some countries might, as India has, really invest in renewables. As you said, that the agreement calls for tripling of renewable energy. Energy efficiency doubling is also on there. So in a sense, this is almost like a set of options that countries can construct a national approach around. I'd just like to make one final observation. In a sense, this is good news, but not for the reasons everybody thinks. It's not that because fossil fuels is mentioned, every country has suddenly agreed to taper off or transition, as the term goes. The fact that it has been explicitly mentioned in a petrostate surrounded by other petrostates reflects the fact that globally, there is a growing national interest and agreement in looking at a world beyond fossil fuels.
Right.
In other words, even some of these countries can see a pathway beyond this. Yeah. Ultimately, countries do what's in their national interest. The agreements like this reflect, in a sense, whether they can collectively, given their national interests, nonetheless come up with some language. Right. In that sense, it reflects a shift in countries around the world. But to expect that they will suddenly change because of this, probably not.
Navroz, this basically means that we are going to end up speaking about this topic for the rest of our lives, because there appear to be so many loopholes and ways around and points of counter-argument. Be that as it may, Abir Bhalla, the declaration calls for, and I quote, a just, orderly and equitable transition so as to achieve net zero. Is that the crux of the problem? How do you ensure an equitable transition of technology for countries which don't have the ability to acquire that technology, don't have the knowledge and the ability to actually get it done?
Well, that's really at the heart of the problem, right? The reason we've seen there's been such a gridlock, the reason that there was so much of an argument and with the conference running into one day extra, was around the fact that countries have their own vested interest, as Navroz was saying, right? Each country wants to do what's in its best interest. And we have fossil fuel producers and we have fossil fuel consumers. So in that sense, transition away in itself was of course not the same as phasing out, but it was very important. And more specifically to your question, I think, how do we ensure just transitions are possible? I think we need to have, there need to be North-South cooperations between the global North and the global South, but also importantly, South-South collaborations, right? Because that's where I think the global South is facing a similar myriad of challenges. Of course, at a local level, it's very different, but when we put our resources together, when we put our technologies together, that's how we can work towards finding a solution. And what's really important, if I may add, is that, unlike the Security Council, decisions made at COPs are not legally binding. So it's not just about countries working together, but it's also about them staying true to their own nationally determined contributions and ensure they're working in that direction.
Ashish Chaturvedi, who's going to be paying for all of this in terms of the transfer of technology? I was at the IMF and the World Bank's annual meeting a couple of months back, and there was a great talk of reform of multilateral development banks. But that's just talk. In terms of implementation, do you believe enough is being done to ensure, for example, that the technology that we are talking about can be transferred?
Thanks, Vishnu, for having me on the show. I think this is one of the sort of areas, finance, the means of implementation, where the entire discussion at this COP falls short. And this is precisely where I think decisions need to be made. The entire discussion on the $100 billion and what is the next step up is still not very clear. The pathway to the next step up is not clear at all. Of course, there are commitments. There is enough and more sort of within the Paris Agreement and the discussion at this COP as well, that developed countries have to make further commitments and, of course, follow up on those commitments as well. There is this paragraph in the cover text, in the global stocktake, which again repeats the language of the Glasgow Agreement about the deep regret, which sort of the developed countries are sort of committing and saying that we've not been able to meet our targets. We need to, of course, put this back to the developed countries that the finance goal has to be met, and of course the ambition on the finance has to be raised as well. Similarly, of course, the reform of the MDBs is still sort of a discussion. And even if you go beyond the discussion on mitigation and start thinking about loss and damage and adaptation financing, the targets are far from being met. Although the fund has been created for loss and damage, 800 million has been committed. But I don't think we are we're really far from the sort of the scale of financing which is required. Yeah. So I think that the challenge is, of course, clear. There's some progress which has been made at this COP, but I think the finance question is still vexed, and it has been in some sense postponed to the next COP.
Yeah. Usha Kelkar, why are we having this discussion? I need to ask you this basic question because, we'll be lost on financing. There's a reason we are talking about this. Why are we talking about any of this?
Very good question. Why do we go to the COPs at all? Because a lot of the kinds of things that we've been hearing about are things that countries are doing anyway, or they're doing themselves. The tripling of renewable energy pledge was something that under the Indian presidency, all the G20 countries agreed to. So we have these discussions year after year for three reasons. One is because we need to do them collectively. Otherwise, individual actions, even regional actions, will not be enough. I think a recent report of the UNFCCC said that from 2019, we're on track to reduce emissions by 2% by 2030. What we need to do is reduce emissions by 43%. So that's why we need to have this collective stock taking. This was the first COP that happened after the global stock take, and a collective course correction, namely in the form of new nationally determined contributions that have to be submitted by 2025 in line with the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. The second reason is that we do these things in order to do them on time. The GST, the UAE consensus as it's called, refers many times to this critical decade. And that's why we come together in these COPs, so that we know we cannot postpone things well into the future. They have to happen now. If we, for example, lock into new transitional fuel infrastructure, new natural gas pipelines or terminals, we'll unnecessarily miss the boat on instead investing the same money in renewable energy storage or renewable energy grids. So the timeliness, taking action now is very important. And the third reason we come together, the COPs, is for the finance, for the means of implementation. And as Ashish spoke about, this has been lacking. The whole of next year is scheduled to be this process called the new collective goal, new collective quantified goal in climate finance. There's a series of meetings scheduled, and hopefully at the Baku COP, it's going to be a finance COP, and there's going to be a lot of discussion on something that goes well beyond the $100 billion past goal, which has not been met.
Rose, and a final question to you. If we don't get this right, by we, the whole world, then what can happen to us beyond what we're already seeing?
I'm sorry, was that question to me, Vishnu?
Yes, Navroz, go ahead.
Okay. Well, look, despite often sounding like a pessimist, and I think Ulka very nicely spelt out the fact that the science says we have to reduce by 43% this decade, and in fact, we're closer to a 2% decline. The combination of what countries have pledged have brought the projected temperature increase down from 3 or 3.5 degrees down to closer to 2.5 degrees or thereabouts, 2.5 to 2.7. I think that countries, when they put these pledges on the table, many countries are conservative. They say what they are fairly sure they can do. I think India will over-comply. I think China will over-comply. The pattern in the Western countries is often that they use the pledges to try and pull up their politics, and so they may, in fact, not be a little bit short. But I actually think that what we should be watching for are the technology trends, the adoption trends, and what is critically missing, which my colleagues have talked about, is the finance trends. That's the part that's really missing. And these are very capital intensive transitions. So what would happen? Well, the kinds of devastating weather events that we've seen will get worse, but it's more than just episodic events. It's also declines in crop yields. It's declines in labor productivity. It's cities becoming increasingly unlivable. It's coastal areas becoming increasingly unmanageable and unlivable. We already have, we're definitely going to face some of these effects already. So we can't not mitigate or not reduce, because we can't adapt to a 4 or 5 degree world. But nor can we ignore adaptation, because we're already locked into a world that is going to become much more inhospitable. And that's just the last point I'll maybe add, is that there was progress at this COP on something called the Global Goal on Adaptation, which laid out an agenda for what every country should do to start preparing more systematically. And I think we're going to see a lot more work on that in the time to come.
Look, I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. After a couple of programs, a couple of weeks of being perhaps fairly pessimistic, there does appear to be some hope. At least people have agreed to keep talking. Let's see if it really results in something substantive. It affects billions across the world. Out of time on this program. From all of us here on the Left, Right and Centre team, good night.